You're listening to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast, where we discuss whatever the fuck we want to. And yes, we can put sex and drugs and Jesus all in the same bed and still be all right at the end of the day. My name is Devanin, and I'll be interviewing guests from every corner of this world as we dig into topics that are too risque for the morning show, as we strive to help you understand what's really going on in your life. There is nothing off the table, and we've got a lot to talk about, so let's dive right into this episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. How the fuck are you doing, world out there? I know you're doing great, and you're so titillating and tasty and delicious. I have with me the lovely, beautiful, handsome, talented, and oh so sexy and intelligent Matthew Gagne. How are you, my dear?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for that terse and begrudging introduction, as Christopher Hitchens would say. No, I'm psyched to be here. Thank you.
Terse and begrudging is a lot of things, but it ain't boring.
It's sarcastic, and it's a vestige of the pre-internet era when you probably didn't realize his joke was going to play on, every lecture he gave. We're going to catch on. This is your line, man, but I like it.
Like, I'm here for it, y'all. He's the author of a titillating and, like he said, sarcastic, dry humor, religious book called Swept Up: Lessons from the End Times. It is not what you think. I'm going to let Matthew tell you what it is.
Yeah, there's a little sarcasm right off the bat. Yeah, so I've always been, somebody who likes to create different things, who likes to write, make video, do all that kind of stuff. But I decided about a year ago, I was going to really dedicate my time to writing a book that I would be, proud to stand by and able to talk about. And they would get a lot of thoughts out there that I think took a while to fully develop, and get ready for the page. But it's been, if nothing else, an interesting platform for conversation. So here we are.
Who do you think, you wrote the book for? What sort of, when it comes to topics of religion, it's really like everyone, because we all have spirits and souls and afterlife.
Yeah.
But what do you hope people are going to gain or learn? What's the community here?
Yeah, good question. Because I was hoping mostly that it would resonate with people who have at least somewhat relatable background. And I know there's a lot of them, especially from my generation, who had a similar experience with church always feeling like an apocalyptic setting rather than something that would draw them into like a loving force, even if that community was loving. But I explore themes through this book that would apply far beyond the church setting, because when I talk about religion, I mean that in a context that goes beyond denominations and, worship and necessarily even beliefs about God. I think it permeates culture. It permeates the way that people construct their identity. I mean, that's kind of what it is to me. And I hope people are open-minded enough that they could read this book without any common background and still derive something from it. So that's why I try to infuse it with humor too, because if I'm just talking about my experience, like it's this crazy thing, which it's not necessarily, it's supposed to be about bigger, dare I say, universal themes. So it's a bit of a generalized answer to say anybody could read it, but I think it's connected with people who don't necessarily have a church background, and I'm happy when that happens, because it means that they took something from the vulnerability of it or the humor of it or whatever it may be. I guess everybody latches onto something different with this.
Absolutely, there is nothing like having a salacious feast in whatever you have written that people can go in there with their little forks and just grub the fuck down.
There you go.
So I'm going to read a short description of this book, and it says, herded into a cotton-clad flock on the church stage, young Matt right here. Young Matt wasn't sure why sheep were the preferred analogy for his religion. It started to make sense only after he learned that a colon was imminent, fueling neurotic thoughts and behaviors as he readied himself for the coming apocalypse. Oh, that sounds
I
like
just want to specify that that was neurotic, not erotic, in case anybody misheard that.
Oh, come on.
I was not turned on by the second coming of Christ, even though it sounds like a porn title. Yeah, it was always kind of fascinating to me. And this is based on a real life experience, the sheep analogy, because, that's I guess a fitting analogy for certain aspects of the Christian religion, which I'll get more nuanced about that. I'm not just trying to bash on Christianity at all. But the idea of sheep, in a pasture being guided by a shepherd is taken as kind of a good thing, right? That we're meant to be a part of. But it was also analogized in the sense, literally on stage, like through a Christmas play where we were these sheep arguing over who gets to be the sacrifice in this Old Testament, pre-Christ setting. And that's the sort of thing that I think demonstrates how we would just receive these concepts that are like, what the fuck? Like, nobody's going to talk about how weird this is, or at least like dive a little deeper into the implications. We would just sort of take it and be like, I guess it'll make sense later. And then sometimes you just never get a good explanation. So I dug deeper into those things and tried to figure out what I thought of them. But it was hitting me, on a pretty stark level from an early age.
I'm here for some stark levels and becoming incredibly uncomfortable, just getting shaken up and shook up all down on the inside, man. So
Yeah, I'm all about getting uncomfortable.
I'm going to read another little blurb here, talking about this whole end times things, the way that it is preached in churches. And it says, another one of his anecdotes, he says that if 20 kids are taught that they live in the final days of a planet long overdue for a mighty reckoning, half will be hella freaked out. Half of these will testify decades later that they're still deprogramming from an apocalyptic mindset, of which half will denounce their conditioning as cult propaganda, while the other half pour through the wreckage for any critical takeaways. I was reading this and I was reminded of from the Queens of Comedy, where you had Queen Monique, Queen Adele, Queen Samora, and Miss Laura. And they did that in the Kings of Comedy too. Queen Adele was doing this joke about how her grandma always used to tell her that she's living in the last days, everything, and how she was fucking freaked out about it.
Right.
And in the joke, Adele is saying like she got tired of hearing her grandmother tell her that everyone's living in their last days. And she's like, finally, she grabbed her grandmother by the collar and she was like, look, stop telling me this shit. This is your fucking fantasy. Okay, you old, you done all the hell you want to do. But she was like, I bet you was 20 and fucking granddaddy, we wasn't living in our last days.
Exactly. No, that actually is a great way of putting it, because it seems like this selective fascination where some people are all pumped on the idea, but only if they're past their prime. You don't see young people in their good years like excited about getting vacuumed through space into heaven. You're like, you're just saying I'm going to die suddenly. Is that cool? Now, I understand that, some people are deep in the theology of it, but like, I think that's a great example. It's said very casually, like, yeah, we're living in the end times. What does that imply, and why are you so sure? But yeah, to me, that was something that was like, at certain stages, presented as months or less than a year away. And I found that very troubling. Now, within that statistic that I presented as if it was thoroughly researched and it was completely just based on my experience, I mean, you start with half the group who actually isn't that shaken up by it. They're just like, boom, like they just sort of hear it and it bounces off. Like, this is church stuff. I'll, sort it out later. Then there's the half of us who are not that way, where we hear that and we're like, wait, what now? And within that, I guess I'm subdividing that there are 5 who are traumatized by the conclusion they draw from it. Not just the rapture's ahead, but like what's to follow. This brings to the forefront an existential crisis. And then some people will then, think independently about it, construct their own way of either acting on it or, separating what they believe and what they don't believe, and they remain very rational. And then there are some who just become pissed off and they're driven by resentment, and anger towards the church. And I always wanted to avoid that because those people they're not usually happier for it. And to me, if those themes actually mattered, I wanted to keep a level head and really figure out what I think. So that was the introduction to the book. And then, if that didn't turn anyone off right away, I think I come around to being a little bit more kind and gracious toward the people who might have presented those ideas.
Well,
I didn't want to put anything, completely in a box of it's good or it's bad. I just wanted to say this is how it might play out.
being kind and gracious is all cute and all, but we have come into a time where people need to be told shit straight the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
Kind and gracious is the spoil of the world, and especially these United States. I'm over kind and gracious. Let's just get to the fucking point and tell people what the fuck is what. Now,
Well, there are people and movements I was not kind and gracious toward. We'll touch on those.
well, I mean, in terms of delivering truths to people, like
Yeah.
I don't want it sugarcoat it. I don't want it pat it down. I want it. Fuck revenge is a dish best served cold, bitch. Truth is a dish best served cold. Serve it straight the fuck up with a touch of compassion, of course. But you
Yeah.
can't be nice about it or just go over people's heads. The people in the church, I think, had good intentions with just about everything they said, short of fucking the altar boys and whoever the hell else that they were in there doing just obviously wrong stuff to. In the case of this, I think the message was to not assume that you're going to necessarily live a certain length of time. So no, people in their 20s and stuff don't fantasize unless they're a spiritual person. Because people who are really, really spiritual do long to go in transition and to be with God or to be one with the cosmos or whatever you want to say it. Some days, I'm like that. I'm like, and I've been this way for a long time. Some days I'm like, I'd rather be a spirit. Not like suicidal, but like sometimes I just feel like I'm there already.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, so the church took shit like that too far, but then the world doesn't necessarily pay enough attention to the finality of life. Because I've been to a lot of funerals, man, a lot of them, and most of them have been people in between like 20 and 40. People who haven't really made it over the prime. And so while someone in their 20s might not be, yay, Jesus, come on back before I have a chance to go to prom, if they're still in high school, before I have a chance to graduate college, but they don't know necessarily they're going to live to make it through that. And it's because you're young doesn't mean you have to get old. So I get the church's point. Get your spiritual life together because you don't know when the fuck you're going to die. But at the same time, they didn't need to tell us every goddamn time the church door opened either.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So because that's one of the more radical positions on the surface, at least, I kind of use that as the opening gateway to discuss how there are all these big concepts that are just thrown around and accepted. And that's, one of many, which I think have the effect of then those outside the church looking at the church community as very fringe, which some of them are. And I guess assuming that this is either something that they want, which as we've discussed in many cases it is, but that the whole system, the heaven and hell, the world's about to end, the moral structure that they're imposing. But there's also a divide within the church where some people, I think, assent to a belief that they don't necessarily want to be true, but they're like, well, this is the way it is. They can't I mean, they don't think otherwise. They're like, I have to convey it. And whether that's a moral thing or an eschatological thing, um, it, there's not a lot of discussion about how people are arriving at these things. It's just like, that's the doctrine. We go with it. I think that's unhealthy, to say the
Oh,
least.
it's super unhealthy, but that is the way that the church is designed. The church is not designed to encourage free thinking or challenging leadership or authority, because the church is very cultish, in the way they go about doing things. And that's why a huge theme I feel like of your book is challenging people to think. Why do you think what you think? Why do you believe what you believe? Why do you feel what you feel? Growing up in church, it was the same way. They put things into my head, into my subconscious, and it took years of therapy and counseling to get it out. That's called religious trauma. We're waiting for them to add it to the damn DSM. They just need to make a damn DSM-6 and just have a whole chapter on it. Done with it.
Yeah, they do update that frequently. I don't know if religious trauma, I guess that's the larger group within which you have, what's it called? Scrupulosity, which is the type of OCD that I definitely had, where the big concern is making sure that you're saved. Because it's one thing if you're presented with all this end time stuff and you're confident you're going to heaven, which has its own problems, but whole other thing if you're concerned about going to hell. So that was front and center.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't feel necessarily like an immoral person, it wasn't, some people say the church told them you're going to hell for doing this or for doing that. To me, it was never that. It was just, I don't really feel like I know God, but the premise is that I'm saved because I do. And because I've received him into my life. And yet I don't feel like these adult church people do, who are clearly saved. I just feel like I'm the sheep at the back of the pack following along. So it was, yeah.
That's a beautiful thing, because the whole way to get into heaven and the whole way to have a happy life, afterlife, spiritual life on this earth and the one to come, the whole point is to get to know God. And what you were clear on is that can't happen with, like, through a pastor, through all these other people. You felt the disconnect, even though you were sitting in the church, and you understood that just being in there did not give you a relationship with God.
Right. And I think if most people were honest about it, they would find that's not the case. I mean, it's almost like this big unspoken reality that everyone is completely bored and gaining nothing from church. Not everyone. There are people who are exceptions and they do appreciate that whole structure, maybe for the sake of stability. But the actual value that it's bringing to their lives, if they're honest, is that they feel like they did a good deed by sitting there for however many hours. Not that they were actually involved in some kind of mutual constructive growth. So whenever I get into a deep dive about what is wrong with the church today, it's like, have you ever been to one? Were you really able to show up and feel like you walked away a better person for whatever happened, while you were sitting there? It's something that needs to be completely rethought. And maybe in some cases it has, but I think even within quote unquote good churches, it's a big ask, honestly, for both the congregation and the pastor, that you're going to have a lecture that really draws people to God more than, I don't know, sharing life with each other.
I concur. Now, one thing I like to point out is that most people go to church for themselves. The whole idea is I need to go there so I can get myself saved and giddy up on, get into heaven, have a good life. People are not going to church for other people. They're going to church for themselves. And they do believe that just going to sit there and checking the boxes. The thing is, because that's the way church is packaged, they make it seem like, come here so you can have an intimate experience with God during worship or whatever the case may be. But really, your most important time with whatever do you believe in is when you're by yourself and no one else is around. There isn't anything more sweet and more sincere than that. It's no different than if you're in a personal relationship with a best friend, a lover, or whatever. You may go out into the public world, have dates or whatever, and that's all great. But your best time is always when you're alone with that person, period.
I agree, but I mean, there's a crisis of people not being able to sit with themselves
Yeah.
and just like really dwell on something and be honest about it. I think people are afraid of themselves in many cases because they know that their honest thoughts are going to expose all kinds of hypocrisy, insecurity, insincerity, which it will for everyone at first. You got to dig that shit up and deal with it, you know?
Blaise Pascal is a poet who wrote that all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. So yes, Mr. Gagne, I would fucking agree with you, and so would
Yes.
Blaise Pascal.
Cognito ergo sum, and incognito no est sum. I made that up.
It sounded so deep and philosophical.
Yeah. If you're not thinking, what are you? That's what I'm getting at.
And you got to slow down. I learned this because I had to spend like a 7-8 day clip in the mental health hospital like last month or the month before because of the way I was deconstructing, self-destructing, and breaking down over this breakup that I just went through with my previous. I mean, I was a boyfriend to him, but he wasn't really in the relationship. I don't really know. I don't know. I was in a relationship. It wasn't until I was there, locked in that building and couldn't leave and had no cell phone and had no computer, was I able to sit down and be still and let all of the barrage of emotions catch up to me. Because before that, I was just running from them, flying here, trying to get away from it, trying to do this drug, trying to have this crazy sex or whatever the case may be, and I was able to sit fucking still. One huge thing I've had to learn, that the counselors and the mental health people have been telling me is to learn how to sit still with feelings, but you don't have to get up and do anything. So if I feel sad, if I have to cry, if I feel lonely, okay, make space for that. But that doesn't mean I need to go out and try to patch it over with some strange person or patch it over with some drug or patch it over with some activity or take a vacation or take a trip or whatever. Just set the fuck still is what I learned how to do. And then I was able to let the shit process.
Yeah. Everybody's got a thing that they run to, and so some people might judge you for whatever choice you make when you're running from something, but everybody's got it, and sometimes it's so covert that they feel like, they're staying healthy the whole time, and it's not, they found little things to distract themselves from real self-analysis.
Anything short of real self-analysis is bullshit. No matter how
Yep.
good, no matter how good it makes you feel, especially that's a tricky thing because things like alcohol and drugs and sex make our anatomy feel good, but that doesn't heal I'm talking about like party drugs now, not psychedelics. That doesn't like heal the mind. But even if you're doing psychedelics just to escape and not going into it with the intention of I want to face, that it still can be, a bad way of trying to escape. Anything that
Right.
you got to face this shit. As they say, the only way out is what? Through.
Yeah. And in all three of those things you just mentioned, if I partake from a place of trying to heal or feel better, it's going to kick back and it's going to make me feel worse. So like, I don't know. I guess people don't track that's what happens if they have the same experience, but that's why I say, like, I think even in writing this book, some people view it as it was like a therapeutic thing. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't actually be able to write anything good I mean, insofar as it's good, but like, I wouldn't be able, like, trying to do something when trying to get back on my feet by doing another thing doesn't usually go well. I have to deal with it myself first before I'm gonna be all there again. If that makes sense.
Yeah. What you're
Be
saying is
sober about it.
it's like Mama RuPaul says, you can't love yourself. How the hell you gonna love anyone else?
Oh yeah, I know that too well. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Now, towards the beginning of this episode, you were mentioning how basically you're saying like religion's become like more of like a social construct, as
Hmm.
opposed to having so much to do with God. So I wonder what you think. I know a lot of people go to church for a community and it's really like for the people. It's it's like their nightclub, if you will, or their Rotary Club or whatever the fuck, or their Toastmasters. It's a place that they go to congregate. Um, I'm all like, the house of God was, designed to be a house, of God. Back in the Old Testament when churches started, people made their journey up there like maybe once a year, and they really worshiped at home. Church was not a weekly thing. And but then when they went, I mean, it seemed like I feel like that people can get tricked into making a god or an idol out of the socialization aspect of it
Hmm.
without realizing it. Because if you're really going to church more to see Felicia and your homegirl and your homeboy and everybody, and for the dinners and luncheons after, and for all the fucking cute shit that they have at these churches these days, what are you really worshiping? I'm not saying everybody's going there with fucked up intentions, but I'm saying they can become fucked up before you realize they're fucked up.
Right. Or if not fucked up, they're just complacent, where it's that I'm putting in my dues mentality. So why not make it fun? Whereas I think like you see a lot of people these days who have become disenfranchised with the church, but they're still kind of spiritually seeking, gravitating towards the like Eastern Orthodox religions. And I think it's because what you mentioned, like where there's a tradition of like the sacrament and like the rituals that are all the way. It's like if we're going to do this religiously, let's really separate that from everything else. Now, I don't think you can completely detach religion from anything. And so there's a place for it, right? But what you're describing is kind of the murky middle ground where the idea of reverence is mixed with the potluck mentality. And
All those carbs.
thanks, Jeannie. Um, yeah,
Bitch.
I had a lot of potlucks in the day. Can't hate on it, but no, like you're absolutely right. If anybody wants to at least attempt to prostrate themselves before the divine, you would think it's a little further from that vibe, and that maybe they would separate those things out. But I'm still saying like you do need a community aspect to accompany that solitude and all of that in a healthy spiritual practice. But therein, I guess if you're seeking like a real see, I don't go to church, so maybe I shouldn't tell people what they should look for in a church. but but hypothetical then, if somebody is trying to have a transcendent experience, I doubt it comes from the mainstream type of assembly.
I concur. But so tell us, where do you stand today? What do you believe in? Why do you believe in it? Tell us where you're at in your faith walk.
Okay, so I know that philosophically I'm agnostic, and that I don't think we know things, and I choose the word things because it's like we package ideas into things, words, concepts, whatever. That's how we're meant to function. But I don't think that if there's true objective reality, that that's something we can take in morsels, right? So anything that we say is by definition subjective. That said, there could very well be an ultimate objective reality. And I think there must be, because we're all attracted to some things and resistant to others. Like this sounds like a true idea. This does not. This leads to pleasure and survival. This leads to pain and suffering. So I think we have what you might call a compass in place. I'm just not one to pin down what that's guiding us toward. It's enough to me to say there's something pulling me or guiding me in a certain direction without going, the Spirit is telling me to say this, right? It's if I'm being honest with myself, that ought to be enough. And when I say ought to anything, I'm assuming that the values I perceive are somehow also put into place by this creator who is at the source of everything. But, when it comes to defining God, I'm still agnostic about that, maybe by some definition atheist, just because I don't presume anything. And yet the whole concept of existence is so mysterious to me that I want to remain open, to whatever it may be. But I think moving from a place of the sense that I'm supposed to know God and I'm supposed to know what God is, and he's reading my heart/mind to determine if I'm sincerely, in love with him and in a relationship. That type of God just does not make sense. So I can't just take that at face value. I could never have a sincere and loving relationship with that. So that's why I don't just go with Pascal's wager and live as if I believe it, because I don't even know what that would look like, right? So if God is associated with good and I see honesty as a good thing, then I have to be honest. And if there is a God, he reads my mind anyway, so he would know if I'm bullshitting a belief. So that's where I stand.
So it sounds like you're a work in progress.
Always. What would I be if not? Piece
Yeah.
of shit.
Well, your mind is open and warm and receptive, and that's the best we can ask of any human. And so, so just be where you're at. Just be where you're at. Just be where you're at, and be happy with that. Shit.
Can I bounce that back though? I'm curious where you're at, because I've read both of your books, and you have, I'm just gonna say, an incredible storytelling ability. Like when you wrote your memoir, mine's almost not really a memoir by comparison, because yours is so vivid, in the moment, paint a picture, and you make the point through your story. Mine kind of bounces back between the point and the story. But then you wrote this other one that is all about the point. It's almost like a gospel track, right? It's a breakdown of the whole thing. And to me, I couldn't believe these two books were written by the same person. I don't think anyone would place those two together at all. And the more religious one is very similar to something that I wrote many years ago when I was like, I better evangelize this message, even if I don't totally believe it, And so I was basically trying to align my logic with the Bible and give the best explanation I could. But I was amazed how similar yours was. So is that still a good reflection of where you're at?
I like how Gandhi said it. I like your Jesus, but I don't like your Christians. I like your Christ, but I don't like your Christians. And so my mistake was doing exactly what I was warning people about a couple of sentences ago, is questioning your intentions of why you're going to church. I thought I was close to God. I am close to God from a young child. I started having spiritual dreams that would come true, and the Lord approached me in these dreams and presented himself to me in different ways. And, I've had very up close and personal conversations with him. He sent me physical angels and things that have talked to me, as I get into in my book and everything. I know God and I believe in him because he has presented himself in a way that my mind could not refute. Okay. I don't levy that expectation on all of humanity, because maybe he hasn't presented himself that way to different people yet. You cannot believe what you cannot, if it doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't make sense to you. Knowing all this, I took my ass to Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas, and got caught up in the hype of that bitch. Okay. And so then when they put me out for not being straight, I let that cause a rift in between me in God, and I didn't really talk to God for like 5 years. Now, why? Because I was worshiping Joel Osteen. I was worshiping all the community around there and the fucking lights and the big ass auditorium and all the cultic ass shit they have had us repeat and say and how good they made me feel about myself. At some point along the way, just like in this narcissistic relationship I just ended, I lost myself. I didn't know when the fuck I lost myself. And then I had to find myself again after the shit went up in flames. Coming back to God, I'm now in a position where, like, that's where I get this, like, I don't think you need to go to church. Your most important time is when you're not at church, because I fell into that trap before. And at some point I made a God out of the community, and more than what I had realized. So as of today, I believe in the Trinity because of the personal experiences that I have had, not because of anything a preacher told me. Excuse me. And so my message to people is to, no matter what fucking bullshit you've been through in church, either yourself or someone you witnessed, don't let that drive a wedge in between you and your faith and what you believe. So I'm all for the tenets in the Bible and things like that, but I promote people to study it for themselves. I don't believe in trusting preachers with your eternal life or with your comfort here on this earth. And so that is why I wrote that book, Don't Call Me a Christian, because I think Christianity is fucked. And I think churches are fucked in general. Not saying all of them are terrible, but at the end of the day, you need to go to God for yourself. Those preachers don't have any sort of access to any special knowledge that's available. You got to learn how to read Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew, and all those things. If you really fucking want to know,
Yeah.
the Bible in its original languages. And it really, really pisses me off that most people in this country who call themselves Christians cannot even much look at any of the close to original writings that we have and discern it for themselves. So they don't even know what the fuck they're reading.
Yeah, that's one component of what church could be that actually would be constructive if people are dead set on, interpreting the Bible. Yeah, that's a self-reflection that I wish most people were capable of, but I don't think they ever would until they had a excommunication or something, or some sort of hostile experience. They wouldn't go back and say, all right, well, what is it that I actually believe? Because now I'm feeling alienated, but I thought there was something there, right? So I'm glad you pivoted that into something more or less self-actualizing. And when you say Christianity is fucked, like, I don't get the impression from what you wrote in Don't Call Me Christian that you think Christianity is fucked, but you think the church has issues.
I don't believe in denominations. I equate the church with Christianity because
Okay.
equates the church with Christianity. The last time I referred to myself as the C word, Mr. Gagne, I was at this event volunteering at a museum, as I do because I love me some art. And we were having a conversation, and I was like, oh, yeah, it got spiritual. I was like, yeah, I'm a Christian. The woman froze, and she was like, are you the good kind or the bad kind? And I was like, you know what? I had to explain to him the good kind, and I'm judging all that. I'm like, I can't not be having a mental block or a roadblock or something that's going to call ice to come up in between me and somebody just because I want to call myself a Christian. From the beginning, it was not so. Jesus wasn't a Christian. John the Baptist wasn't a Christian. None of the prophets of old were Christians. That's something that people came up with in order to divide the people who were going to be Orthodox Jews from the people who were going to follow the ways of Christ. That's the only reason that they started that word. It was because they had to have some clarity on who stood the fuck for what. But now that that word is no longer serving the body of Christ, it's too corrupt with Republicans doing their shit, and we're about to take a turn to politics right now.
All right.
It's too corrupt. It's too fucking corrupt. If I use the C word and a person has to ask me, like, basically, are you the Republican kind? Or are you the evangelical kind? Or are you the good kind? Girl.
It's are you an ideologue or are you being sincere?
I don't have for the bullshit. I want to like me, to accept the things I have to say. And so I abandoned that word. And I've never called myself a Christian since then because it is not used how it was intended. In churches, are but bees nests and wasps nests in many cases for all of these little Christian people to go run their asses up in there and then come back out and throw shade at everybody else. Yes, I'm talking to you, Karen.
I'm hanging out with a Karen later today. She hates that. But
Oh, wait,
yeah,
wait, wait. I have a middle of the show dad joke because
let's go. Yeah.
'cause I asked this one to somebody the other day. Why did Karen press Control Alt Delete on her keyboard?
Tell me.
Because she wanted to see the task manager.
There we go.
So tell that to your Karen later on. Hopefully,
Yeah, okay. She'll love it.
she's not Karen with a capital K. Now, actually, that bitch ass Karen can have a lowercase K. Fuck that hoe. Or you gotta say so.
I don't know. I think I was going to say something around the idea of judgmental or moralistic Christians. You know, there's the ones who I think genuinely want to impose their morality on others because they're like, this is the way. And then there's the ones who don't actually feel any of that. And it's like this difficult concession, you know? And I remember having a point in my own life when I think honestly, this was the first time that I'd like really gotten to know a gay man and spoken to him plainly about religion, right? And we're having a intellectual conversation and he says to me, so do you think me being gay is a sin? And I was like, shit, I basically have to say yes because I'm going off of, you know, this verse and that verse, whatever the church cites. It just kind of, it's the norm at the time. This was a long time ago. And so I was like, yes, but we all have our own sins. And then I compared it to like actual ethical sins. I was like, you know, some people are greedy or, you know, do this and that. And it's like, no, that's what I'm describing actually is a utilitarian problem. And I'm projecting that onto his lifestyle now. And I don't even want to be saying that because I don't even know why I would tell you that's bad. And that was a moment of real introspection. Like, I don't even know why I feel like that in the church, I wouldn't be allowed to fellowship with a gay person. It's bizarre. So it's like, you have to actually believe something before you are going to live it out. And there's so many things like that that caused me personal controversy in the Bible. It's like, am I going to defend that? Because if I say I believe it on account of it being in the Bible, I'm going to have to take all of this. Now, I understand, of course, you know, there's other ways of interpreting the Bible, and that's church to church and person to person. But that's what defines religion to me, is taking anything as a matter of groupthink. You know, this is how our system views it. And then you just have to convey it. And some people like doing that and some people don't.
It's interesting because they'll ostracize like people who've gotten divorced, women who've gotten divorces.
Yeah, it's another one. Yep.
But the thing is, Jesus said to draw in people. He said he hung out with people who had issues and things like that. The last thing Jesus would have done would have discarded people. And the whole group culture of the church is so, it is the antithesis to me of true cohesion because there really is not cohesion within the body of Christ or within Christianity. So this one young, you know, Christian dude that I met, you know, he was, we were talking about, you know, philosophy and things like that. And I was explaining to him, you know, everybody needs to be able to interpret the Bible for themselves, go to God for themselves. And then he was like, so everyone can just come up with their own thing. And I was like, well, the church has already done that, my dear, because to say Christianity is supposed to be worshiping the same God, you have 50 different denominations and 1,000 different translations of supposedly the same text. So I was like, young man.
Yeah.
They're mind fucking you because everybody's already come up with their own shit anyway. And all I'm saying is that each individual needs to just get really granular and do what the big churches and the denominations are doing. All that means that everybody wants to do their own thing and look at God their own way.
Exactly. So back to the politics thing, that ties in perfectly because you have the same thing within politics and in the section between politics and religion.
Okay, who's your favorite Republican right now? Is it George Santos, Donald Trump, or who's that guy fighting Disney down in Florida? Fuck.
Who's my favorite
Ron, De-
Republican?
Ron DeSanctimonious as
Is he Republican? I honestly didn't. I seriously don't track politics very closely.
Oh yeah. So at least if you don't track politics very closely, these three asshats, you know, you know, yeah. So Ron DeSantis is in Florida. He's the one who's fighting Disney. It just cost them like a $1 billion project there where Disney's going to move all these jobs from California, and Disney's just like, fuck you. And George Santos is the one who made up all these lies and stuff, and they were trying to get him removed from Congress because he's been, like, I think, indicted or charges brought against him for his lies, and the Republicans blocked him being removed from Congress because they're Republicans. And then Trump is Trump.
So Santos is Republican.
All three of them are.
Okay.
So look them up when you have time because
Because I know who Santos is as a figure, so that's why I'm like, wait, he's Republican? Because it's hilarious to me when anyone who is like on the hard lines of an ideology ends up getting caught in things that are so like counter to the values that they preach, you know?
oh, you mean because he's a flaming queen?
Right.
That
Right.
was a very conservative and respectful way that you were saying that. He's saying because he queens out, he's clearly not straight. Why in the fuck would he be standing for Republican principles? There's a whole caucus or group of fuck, I can't remember what animal or the fuck they're called, but there's a whole group of like gay Republicans.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
whole thing, and it is the stupidest shit that anybody's
well,
ever seen.
It could very well stem from their like conservative values in that sometimes, you know, when a pastor or somebody is outed in a lifestyle like that, it's because the idea to them, I mean, now they might just be pushing back and running from something that they want to keep concealed, but also that the idea is so kinky because it's so forbidden that's like what draws them to it. And that's why you find out, oh, this pastor has a sex slave in his basement. Like, yeah, because he gets off on it because it's like, hell no, he wouldn't be that.
And most preachers and pastors are narcissists, stark raving narcissists. And narcissists, as we know, live in their own world. They love double standards, and the shit that they tell you not to do, they vehemently mean they don't want you to do it, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to go run off and do it. And so that's why we find these preachers doing all kinds of kinkery and shit, you know, preaching against the gays on Sunday morning, but then having an orgy on Sunday night. You know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, as with any position of authority, it's like the criteria for entry is that you have an inflated sense of
ego.
importance. Unless I mean, there are rare ones who I think are like, I'm duty bound to do this thing I don't want to be doing, and I'm going to be as humble as I can about it. But they're still human. They're still going to be corrupted by that on some level.
On some level. Now, it is the Log Cabin Republicans that I was thinking about, and I pulled up their website. It says the Log Cabin Republicans is the nation's largest Republican organization dedicated to representing LGBT conservatives and allies for more than 40 years. This is just as dumb to me as down here in the South, how we have these racist queer people.
That could be the counterexample of what I was describing on a psychological level.
Child, it's sad but touching, as they say. It's sad but touching.
Is it touching?
We mean touch like in a special way, like short school bus touch.
Oh, touched. Yeah, I gotcha.
What do you think about? Did you watch the Jerry Falwell documentary?
God forbid. Oh, you know I did twice. That was crazy because I'm like seeing people that well, not just people I know, but the world that I was living in when all of that went down. And I've been told more than once, Matt, you could have been Becky's pool boy. And I'm like, hell no.
It's not too late. I'm sure if you said,
I'm good. I'm good. She passed the MILF cap for me.
You know, I that mm. I'm glad it was all exposed and everything like that for whatever it's worth. I'm glad that Jerry Falwell Jr. finally got the balls to be like, you know what? I ain't about this life. I didn't want to be up here doing this shit anyway.
Yeah.
You know,
It was wild that I think the first article that came out about it afterwards, maybe it was Vanity Fair, where he just completely was like, "Yeah, fuck all of that. I'm glad I'm out." Which is sort of saving face because it's like, well, you only once you were outed. But the value of that being fully exposed and unpacked the way that the documentary did really showed, going back to the roots of that whole movement that spawned liberty and spawned a lot, the moral majority and all of that. Like, you see how intertwined all of these completely human motivations are and co-opting God and Christianity. So, I remember when I was at Liberty both times being like, yeah, there's a few bad apples, but at the center of it is a good community and whatever. But nah, can't can't look at that the same again.
so for y'all who don't know, Liberty University is what in Virginia?
Yeah.
Lyn-
Lynchburg, Virginia.
Lynchburg, Virginia will not be going any place with Lynch in it. Thank you very
Hmm.
much. And but this documentary, the Falwells, super rich people, super popular, hanging out with all your big televangelists. They get this hot ass pool boy who starts fucking literally both of them doing sexual things with Jerry Falwell Jr. and the wife, and all the tea is spilled. He shows up with the receipts and everything, and it was on Hulu the last time I saw it. And so,
Yeah.
y'all want to get that sort of tea. Now, were you at the university that the Falwell started? You were at Liberty. Were you there when this scandal happened, or when
Yes.
you were there?
Yeah. So I was there originally, when I was an undergrad was like way before that, but I had gone back even once I was ideologically not aligned with Liberty's values. I wanted to go back when I started podcasting to talk to people from a similar background on campus. And yeah, also just to kind of exercise some demons from my past. So there I was working at the school, taking classes as I pleased because they were free, but mostly just working and podcasting and, attending convocations and stuff sometimes. So I was fully integrated in the culture. In fact, I felt more like a student then than I had back in the day when I was too depressed to come out of my room. So I was like really in the thick of it. And in the sense also that I was, in all the big wigs' offices, cleaning them and stuff like that. I was a janitor. And yeah, I was getting a feeling about Jerry and, talking to students, some of whom shared my feelings and others who were like, yeah, he's hilarious. We love it. You could see both sides of that. And the pool boy was something we all kind of joked about. Like, we knew that there was something about a pool boy, but like, well, of course not though, because this is the campus president who says that we can't dance or drink or can't even like kiss your girlfriend or boyfriend on campus. Like, this is obviously not that kind of scandal. Like, maybe he's got some fishy financial maneuvers. So for it to come out and be that intense, now there was build up, While he was dismissed from his role as the president before all of that came out. I don't know how long the board of directors knew that he was into that or that was going on, but they let a lot of stuff fly when he started unleashing on Twitter. And I mean, the man was clearly an alcoholic. He'd walk around with a glass of vodka or tequila or something all the time. Yeah, big old mess. And I was watching it go down and sort of documenting it both through podcast and a documentary that I was filming at the time, like a vlog style thing. So got a lot of that on record.
Ooh, we girl. It's not every day you get to live through some shit like that. Do you think that shook your faith? Did it make you, what were the,
I love having my faith shaken. When if I'm taking something as like, this is normal and this is fine, this is just my life. And then it just goes bam, like It's even crazier than you could have imagined. I love that. I don't want to, I want to always doubt everything, you know, or at least be like, you never know what's possible. So because I had zero faith in the institutional religion or politics that they were peddling. So it was glorious watching it go up in flames, pun acknowledged.
He wasn't one of those ones going, "Oh my god, I can't believe this is happening. I don't know who I am anymore." You're like,
Yeah, he knew who he was all along. And yeah, I was definitely not struggling with any identity crisis from that.
it happens though. When these people's preachers get arrested or caught up or shut down their tax evasion or whatever sex scandal, it causes the whole congregation in some of those churches to just go haywire. And also
Yeah. It was kind of funny how, I mean, after that all came out, I'd already left the school and that whole place, but um it did seem like they sort of tried to just bounce back. Like they literally put another Jerry in his place and were like, we're good, we're good. He had some issues. Moving on. And I think they're still doing fine. Like it's weird how many people don't actually care. I mean, maybe they shouldn't care. It's the man's personal life and it was fucked, but that's why I think this documentary is so important, because it's showing that there was a lot more to it than just, oh, this guy likes to watch his wife get pounded. Like that's not the problem. There's way more to it that just happened to get unraveled simultaneously to that.
child, it is all about what affects the bottom line because churches are money-driven businesses. They're not soul-driven businesses these days. It's like so I get kicked out of Lakewood Church because I'm hanging out in Montrose in Houston in the gay district downtown for stuff I'm not doing at church. Yet Joel Osteen has Kanye West on stage and they're like friends. So you want your congregation to grow up and be like Kanye.
Kanye's been through many phases. What era are we talking about? No, I'm not trying to defend him. I'm saying, at what point was his affiliation with Kanye?
At what point was he ever?
Which yay did he get?
Oh, fuck. Oh, this has been a couple of years. All I know, this is the same Kanye who snatches shit microphones from white bitches on stage.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's still the same Kanye. This is the same
Kanye, I know.
This is the same Kanye now who's associated with white supremacists and defending Donald Trump. This is the person Joel Osteen's like, yeah, that's my guy. But my volunteer who's working for free is not permitted to go hang out with gay people when they're not even.
Yeah, yeah. No, he was Kanye and Jerry were a thing too. And the only reason Jerry didn't bring Kanye in, Kanye asked to do like what they call a Sunday service, which is really just like a concert in the football stadium recorded on a Sunday morning. And Jerry just didn't realize Kanye's clout. So he was like, nah, we've got stuff going on. But yeah, he wanted to be involved with Liberty right when he was finding Jesus, in the wake of Jesus. And then
Yeah, I think he just found Jesus. He didn't give a damn about God. But so Giancarlo Granda was the name of the pool boy. I don't know if he went to Liberty or not. Did you know him by chance?
No, I doubt we ever would have crossed paths. I mean, I've probably seen him, but I don't even know if he was a student.
Okay. So then before we begin to wrap this up, and thanks for going over our time a little bit here.
Oh, I'll go as long as you want.
I know that you do like movies and things like that. Like you said, you were filming a documentary during this time. Do you care to tell people about that aspect of you?
Sure. Yeah. So don't expect to see anything that's going to hit a theater near you anytime soon, but it's all on my YouTube. I try to make videos and movies that tell a story through my lens. So sometimes it comes across really egotistical, and sometimes actually doing those projects has gotten me a little self-absorbed and depressed, but in the name of trying to say something of value. So yeah, twice in my life, in 2019 and then 2019 and in last year, 2022, I made these like 2.5-hour videos that just covered everything I did in my life with some narration and input from other people to just try to capture something about what makes people tick. So that's one of the things that's on my YouTube. And then a lot of, like poem and comedy projects. and I'm going to be dropping something this coming week. So maybe that'll be out by the time this is posted. But yeah, I'm on YouTube, Spotify, both under my full name, and the book's on Amazon.
All of that will be going in the showy notes. Okay. So now we can switch over to my dad jokes. If you're ready, was there anything else?
Let's roll.
So today's dad jokes are brought to you courtesy of countryliving.com. Dad joke number 1. Why should we pray for the calendar?
Because it's got some dates coming up.
Is that some dates coming up?
Yeah, I don't know.
Kind of. Because its days are numbered.
Oh, that's better. Yep.
God, I don't want to go on dates with whoever the fuck the calendar's going out with.
It's got a lot of them.
Fucking bitches. Dad joke number 2. Why do fathers take an extra pair of socks when they go golfing?
In case they get a hole in one.
Right, you got it.
Boom. Oh man, I must have impregnated somebody because I feel like a dad.
Hey, you never know. We can get Jerry Springer.
Yeah, I've had to. Yeah, let's leave that alone.
Right. Dad joke number 3. What did the ocean say to the beach?
Damn you fine.
That would have been a high compliment and I would have accepted it, but actually nothing, it just waved.
But Love it.
And we love dad jokes here on the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast because you can always use a dad joke to tell yourself if you're starting to take life too seriously or not. Or
You're right.
You can't laugh at a good corny ass whack-a-doodle whack-a-mo bullshit joke like just,
Yeah.
It's time for you to find Christ, find a blunt, find a glass of Chardonnay, find a dick. This that no, don't do that. Don't you do that? Don't y'all do that.
Yeah, I'm good.
Sex is a beautiful thing and should be used in the sacred spiritual way that God intended. So, Matt, do you have any last words for the world, words of encouragement, mental health hacks, anything at all you want to fucking say?
Oh my God, you can open up the platform, man. I don't want to probably give people advice on mental health. Let's see. Oh man, give me a genre.
Preach,
Something-
preach.
Give me something. Give me something to riff off of. Give me a word, anything. I'll play with it.
And anything that you would like to say on people who are currently in a state of religious trauma, like people who are currently attending church and they know that they are not happy, but they can't leave.
Man, if you feel like you can't leave, you got to figure out, as I guess you did, honestly, if it's a problem with people or a problem with God, as you understand God. And if the problem, well, if you feel like you can't leave the church, I think you'd probably be surprised once you step outside of it and let go, as scary as it may be, of some of the preconceived assumptions that you've held, that you're going to actually see maybe what you call God in a whole new way, and not a corrupted way necessarily, a childlike, as Jesus would advocate. And if that is in fact what's at the core of your belief. If it's not, you might see something else that resonates with you. But if you are genuinely seeking God and you're like in a place that's uncomfortable, like, well, this is you we're talking about. Don't let other people tell you what to believe, or it's not a belief. And if you're not comfortable in that setting, trauma is a serious thing. And I don't know if I can say, to somebody who's been genuinely abused or traumatized, how they should respond to that. Where's a safe place to be, or if the church is going to bring value to them. But if you're looking for solutions from people you don't necessarily trust, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty obvious red flag. You know, if you're trusting in the structure of a belief rather than an experience you've actually had or a logic that actually makes sense to you, because that's all we've got, logic and experiences, I think. Don't know what other boxes there could be. So I hope that rings true. I mean, I'm saying what to me is very self-evident and profound, but maybe someone needs to hear that.
Logic and experiences go a long way. Logic just goes back to, why do you think what you think? Why do you believe what you believe? Why do you feel what you feel? It's logic. It's logical living as opposed to emotional living. Logic, what you're saying, ties back to how we were saying, when you have problems, you can't go run hide it in sex. You can't go run hide it in alcohol. You can't go run hide it in drugs. The only logical thing to do is to face the shit and go through it and set your ass still and figure out what the fuck's going on with you. So I would say amen, amen, and a hallelujah to everything that you just said, Matthew Garnier. The link to his book will go in the showy notes. He's on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, and all of that is going to go in the showy notes, as it always does. Matthew, you've been a pleasure.
Likewise.
I look forward to releasing this episode and exposing your beautiful face to this whole wide world.
Hey, anybody who's hung around this long, I truly thank you for supporting independent, thought-provoking, titillating content.
Yes, I'm here for
this show. We love it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all so much for taking time to listen to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. It really means everything to me. Look, if you love the show, you can find more information and resources at sexdrugsandjesus.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Feel free to reach out to me directly at Devanin at sexdrugsandjesus.com and on Twitter and Facebook as well. My name is Devanin. It's been wonderful being your host today. And just remember that everything is going to be all right.